What if a decision made in minutes could erase $31 billion? Not because the leaders were incompetent, not because they lacked vision, resources, or talent, but because they hesitated at the exact moment that mattered most. Behind every corporate collapse, there's a defining instant, one overlooked warning. One choice that seems rational in the moment, but becomes catastrophic in hindsight. Today, we're breaking down how Kodak, once the undisputed king of photography, invented the future, created the technology that would revolutionize an entire industry, and then chose to ignore it. This isn't just a story about cameras, film, or technology. It's a story about leadership under pressure, fear of change, and the hidden cost of playing it safe. It's a lesson in how hesitation, even by the smartest minds, can destroy empires. The moment of the wrong choice, the decision that changed everything. In 1975, an engineer named Steven Sasson built the first digital camera prototype. It weighed nearly 8 pounds, recorded images onto a cassette tape, and captured photos at 0.01 megapixels. It took 23 seconds to record a single image. Here's the shocking part. Kodak invented digital photography, the very technology that would eventually disrupt the entire photography industry. At the time, Kodak controlled nearly 90% of film sales in the United States and about 85% of camera sales worldwide. Film wasn't just a product, it was a cash machine. By the 1980s, Kodak was generating billions annually, with profit margins on film estimated between 60–70%. They had the market, the brand, and the technology, yet one decision would change everything. When Sasson presented the digital prototype to executives, the response wasn't excitement, it was fear. Digital photography threatened Kodak's core business. Executives reportedly saw it as interesting but dangerous. Instead of aggressively commercializing it, Kodak chose to protect its film empire, delaying innovation. They prioritized existing revenue over shaping the inevitable future. In the short term, this decision seemed logical. Film was wildly profitable. Digital looked primitive and unthreatening. But innovation never waits for comfort. By the late 1990s, digital camera adoption accelerated. Competitors like Sony and Canon invested heavily in digital imaging. Meanwhile, Kodak hesitated, entering the market late and without urgency. Their caution, while understandable, allowed others to seize the digital future, leaving Kodak struggling to catch up. The lesson to emphasize: market leaders often fail not because they lack innovation, but because they fear disrupting themselves. The moment Kodak chose safety over progress set the stage for a financial collapse that would erase billions and reshape an entire industry. The financial fallout: billion years. Now move into hard data. This is where authority builds trust, and viewers grasp the true scale of Kodak's failure. At its peak in 1997, Kodak's market value was approximately $31 billion. The company employed over 145,000 people and operated in more than 150 countries. Film sales were still strong, generating billions annually with profit margins of 60–70%. Kodak wasn't just a company, it was an industry powerhouse, the name synonymous with photography around the world. Its dominance seemed unshakable, but by the early 2000s, digital photography exploded. Between 2000 and 2010, film camera sales collapsed by over 90%, while digital camera shipments surged globally. Consumers rapidly shifted to digital storage, online sharing, and smartphones. Kodak attempted to pivot, spending billions to acquire digital imaging companies and even briefly becoming one of the top digital camera sellers. Yet a critical problem remained. Digital cameras had razor-thin margins compared to consumable film, Kodak's historic cash generator. Film had been recurring revenue, but digital cameras were one-time purchases, leaving Kodak struggling to monetize its innovation. Revenue fell sharply. 2000 revenue, $13.3 billion. 2010 revenue, $7.2 billion. Stock prices dropped over 90% from their peak. The final blow came in January 2012, when Kodak filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Market value collapsed to under $150 million, tens of thousands of jobs were eliminated, and shareholders lost billions. A company that had defined photography for a century was almost gone. The cost of one strategic hesitation? Tens of billions in lost market value, irreversible brand erosion, and permanent loss of industry leadership. This section is heavy because it shows the real, tangible consequences of ignoring change, how hesitation and fear can turn an empire into a cautionary tale. The deeper lesson: why smart companies make fatal errors. This is where we elevate the script from storytelling to real insight. Kodak's failure wasn't about incompetence. It was about psychology, corporate structure, and the way human nature interacts with business. Even the most brilliant companies can collapse if they fail to adapt. There are three powerful concepts to discuss here. 1. The innovator's dilemma. Coined by Clayton Christensen, this concept explains how dominant companies fail when disruptive technologies initially appear weaker or less profitable. In 1975, digital photography seemed slow, low quality, and unthreatening. Film was clearer, profitable, and widely trusted. For Kodak, choosing stability over uncertainty felt rational at the time. But the mistake wasn't the technology itself. It was the mindset that innovation must look perfect to be embraced. By ignoring a nascent trend, Kodak allowed competitors to innovate and dominate markets they didn't even anticipate. 2. Cannibalization fear. Kodak feared that digital cameras would destroy its film sales. Ironically, by refusing to cannibalize itself, competitors did it for them. Strong companies often hesitate to destroy their own golden goose, but disruption is inevitable. Kodak's hesitation allowed Sony, Canon, and Nikon to capture the emerging market, while Kodak struggled to catch up years later. Even when they tried to compete digitally, the early advantage was gone. 3. Short-term incentives versus long-term vision. Public companies answer to shareholders quarterly. Investing heavily in digital in the 1980s or 1990s would have temporarily reduced profits. Kodak's executives prioritized short-term earnings over long-term survival. By 2010, smartphone cameras were replacing standalone digital cameras entirely, hitting companies that barely survived the first digital shift. Kodak didn't just miss one wave, they missed two, losing both market relevance and brand leadership. Today, the global photography industry is dominated by digital ecosystems, cloud storage, smartphone imaging, social platforms, and software solutions. None of these are controlled by Kodak. The lesson is clear. Success today doesn't guarantee survival tomorrow, and fear of change can turn industry leaders into cautionary tales. Kodak reminds us that innovation waits for no one, and hesitation can cost billions. One decision. That's all it took. A company that once dominated the world didn't collapse overnight, it hesitated. It protected what was profitable instead of preparing for what was inevitable. And that hesitation cost billions. The story of Eastman Kodak isn't just about cameras or film. It's about leadership under pressure, the danger of ignoring disruptive change, and the silent risk of believing today's success guarantees tomorrow's survival. Markets evolve. Technology shifts. And sometimes the biggest threat isn't your competitor. It's your own fear of change. So here's the real question. Where in your life or business are you choosing comfort over adaptation? If this breakdown gave you a new perspective, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more deep dives into the decisions that shaped industries. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Was Kodak's fall inevitable, or could it have been avoided? Because sometimes the most expensive mistakes start with the smallest choices.